vote, so it was unanimous of 7. Commissioner Moore abstained, McNish absent. We're going to move on to 7. And Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know Mr. Gibbons, and because of that, I'm going to recuse myself from the appeal.
Okay. All right. With that being said, we'll move on to number 7. Mr. Rich Gibbons, sub-guide license denial appeal for possible action. Okay. Now we're back to where we were. I'm going to call the meeting to order, or the hearing to order. And request for hearing those.
May please, Commissioners, if you go down to subpart 2, that's where we would go on NAC 501.185, because under 2, this is where the Commission will use the following procedure in the order set forth in paragraphs A through E. We're hearing regarding a denial of an applicant's application for a license or permit, which that's what we're going to proceed on.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I just want to think we got it figured out where we're going. We're going to change gears again. The appellant will present its evidence and then be cross-examined by the department, questioned by the commission. So I would say we're at A at this point. Somebody has something different. So the appellant will present his evidence and then be cross-examined by the department and then questioned by the commission. Okay, go ahead.
I have no evidence. I'm just here to defend the citations I did not write on the application.
Do you guys understand that?
Cut and dry. I didn't put them on there. We blew through the application to get them in, and I have no excuses.
Okay. Does the department have anything to add at this point?
No, sir.
Does the commission have questions at this point of the appellant?
So just to be clear, you're not denying those previous violations and the fact that you didn't put them on your application?
No, sir. I take full responsibility for them.
Okay. Any other questions of Commissioner McDash?
What, you appealed the denial of your application?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what was the basis of your appeal? What were you, did you have any, what were your grounds that you felt that you wanted the commission to consider? Because Richard, you're placing us in a tough position here because you haven't really laid out what it is that you feel should be taken into account in determining, whether or not your application should be properly denied.
I mean, I can sit here and argue all the tickets. I mean, I'd rather not argue I'd rather not make excuses for them. They happened, and I mean, I don't know. I'm new at this. This is my first time. I don't know what to expect. I really don't know what to do or say either. So,
Okay,
if there's if you guys have questions, I can answer the questions.
Okay. We've obviously just finished one of these studies, and so my brain is scrambled right now. But in my recollection of reading the documents, the documents contain all of the violations and citations that are at issue. Is there any of those violations that you feel are not legitimate violations?
No, sir. I mean, the trespass violation, there was other hunters where the road went out. I didn't want to blow their hunt, so I chose another route out, which I assumed I was still on the game management area in Yerington. The gate wasn't locked, so I used that as my exit. Come to find out it was not. It was private property, so I mean, it's a legitimate ticket. The life vest, I didn't put that on the application. I didn't associate that with fishing game for some reason. I don't know why it didn't. More of a, I don't know. I had enough life vests in the boat. I just did not have one large enough to fit me. So, I mean, yes, there was enough, but no, there wasn't one big enough.
Okay, but you didn't confess any of those
No, no,
tickets
because-
and pled guilty and
Yep.
paid the fines?
No, when I'm at fault, I'm gonna take full responsibility for it. There's no sense in arguing and dragging it out.
Do you have any other questions?
Commissioner Young.
Sir, how much of your livelihood is dependent upon you working as a sub guide?
None of my livelihood is dependent on being a sub guide. I want to be a guide. I've got a lot to offer to people. I mean, I learn from them just as much as they learn from me. I spend 90% of my life in the outdoors, camping, hunting, fishing. I take tons of it. Total, probably close to 14 years.
You worked under the same master guide all this time?
I have not, this was my first year.
It's your first year doing it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Does the department have any questions of the appellant? Okay, seeing none and no questions, I think we can move on to B now. The department will present evidence and be cross-examined by the appellant and questioned by the commission.
For the record, Rob Long Beach, Chief Game Warden. I'll just run through the exhibits with you. And I do want to say I do appreciate Mr. Gibbons' honesty. But that was in question with us, and I'll demonstrate that here in a moment. Exhibit 1 are the applicable NACs 504-600 and 504-671 with regards to sub-guide licenses. And under NAC 504-671, lists the grounds for denial, revocation, or suspension of license. This is Mr. Gibbons' first application we've received. He's not been a sub-guide in the past. So it can be denied for the yellow highlighted areas for number 1, fraud or deception in procuring a license, a conviction of having violated a provision of Chapter 488 or Title 45 of NRS, or any regulation adopted pursuant thereto, or for a conviction of having violated an equivalent provision in the law or regulations of any other state or federal government. And then on number 18, on the last page there, that is exhibit for revocation of hunting and fishing licenses of the guide in any state. Exhibit number 2 is the application we received from Mr. Gibbons. And you'll note on page 3 of 4, number 7 asks for the violation history. And in bold and underlined, it states, failure to report any conviction will result in a denial of your application. Convictions reported on previous applications will still be reported on this application. And then it says, note, the term conviction means a final conviction, a forfeiture of bail or collateral, or a plea bargain, or a plea of nolo contendere is equivalent to a conviction. So you'll see in 7, A, B, C, D, where it asks for convictions, E, check no. C, have you ever been convicted of violating a provision of Nevada's wildlife or boating laws or regulations? So boating laws are right in there. Or those of any other state or the federal government? If yes, list all the convictions below. And none were listed and the box was checked no. Then exhibit then based on the convictions you'll see in that same exhibit, we included the citations for the convictions. So Mr. Gibbons was convicted in February of 2000 in the state of Nevada for failed to properly validate his deer tag. He was convicted September 4th of '08 for hunting on private land without permission. And convicted in 7/25 of 2011 for the insufficient life jackets on board. And you'll note on the back of the citation there are the officer's notes during a safety equipment check of the vessel. He was documented to fail to have a sufficient number of personal flotation devices on board and was warned on a fire extinguisher violation. And then behind that is our NWDS, Nevada Wildlife Data System, confirmation of those violations as well. Then exhibit number 3 is the letter we sent to Mr. Gibbons, basically saying that we were denying his application. And if you'll note on the 3rd line of the 1st paragraph, it's very clear. It was evident that you failed to report, as required on the application, at least 3 convictions from Nevada courts. You listed the convictions.
Hello?
Exhibit number 4 is a letter from Mr. Gibbons sincerely apologizing for having left the convictions off. And I, Rich Gibbons, swear that in no way, shape, or form was I trying to misrepresent myself by leaving violations off my application. Then he lists the 3 violations that we pointed out he failed to include in his application. Exhibit number 5 is documentation that we received a call from California Fish and Game that Mr. Gibbons was convicted of a deer poaching in California, was on probation, and wasn't able to hunt, trap, or possess any firearms. Then you'll see number 6 is Chief or Captain Dankowski requested from Parole and Probation in California the records on that violation. And right after the letter, you'll see a page that lists the charges. Charge 1, possession of unmarked game, he was found guilty. Charge 2, taking a deer out of season, guilty. And then there was a violation of probation charge as well. And another charge was dismissed. So that was these violations. It's important to note that they occurred in 1997 and 2000. So they are older violations, but they were failed to disclose them. And you'll see further in that exhibit the report from the California Game Warden, where he was caught by the California Game Warden with some juveniles and shooting quail and I believe it was geese while he was on probation. And you'll see on page 2 of that report, the 2nd paragraph at the bottom, I told Gibbons, the officer speaking, I told Gibbons that it was obvious to me that he was hunting in violation of the probation terms of his previous poaching conviction. So based on that, it seemed rather unlikely, even though it occurred a long time ago, 1997 and 2000, that one would forget that they were convicted of poaching deer, convicted of violating probation. And you'll also notice in our exhibits that a warrant for his arrest was issued at one time for the violation of probation. So I find it very difficult to believe that that's an oversight and just forgot that had happened. So we're not saying that he never has a chance of obtaining a license, sub-guide's license in Nevada. But based on the application and the opportunity to correct it and not completely correcting it, we thought it appropriate to revoke and bring it before the commission and have that reviewed. And if he applies next year, a year from now, we'd be agreeable to potentially license.
Okay. Do you have any cross-examination of the department at this point?
No, I'd like to say one thing. On the California violation and the application, I did not see on the application where it asked for violations from another state. It asked for Nevada violations. I did not see specifically where it had asked for another state. That's why that one was left off.
Okay, any questions of the department by the commission? Commissioner Macbeth?
I note that when I read the regulation, NAC 504.671, states that the department may deny application. And so that means that you have the discretion to deny, based on violations, and that, based on this application, that's the, your discretion is that he didn't properly report.
That is correct. Under 7C, have you ever been convicted of violating the provisions of Nevada wildlife reporting laws or regulations or those of any other state or federal government? So it's right there in black and white.
Okay, any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay, we're moving on to C then. The department and the appellant will present any rebuttal evidence and then be cross-examined by the party and questioned by the commission on issues limited to the rebuttal evidence. Do you guys have any rebuttal evidence that you want to submit at this point?
No, sir.
Okay. Closing arguments will be presented by the appellant and then by the department. So you go first on your closing argument.
I made mistakes. Some of them were quite a few years back. I paid for those mistakes. I paid for the most recent mistakes, and I've grown up. I mean, I've got a family now. I know what's right, what's wrong. I choose to do all the right stuff, and if I have the opportunity to guide, then I would like to guide. I'm not going to deny any of the violations. I did them, I paid for them, and I'm moving on, so.
Okay. Now the department, do you have any closing arguments?
Yeah, for the record, Rob Bonamici, Chief Game Warden. I think it's important to note the reason why we elected to not accept the application and deny it. These are old violations, the most recent being 2011. So we're looking at older type violations. But when we license a guide, it is in essence putting our stamp of approval on that guide, whether they're a sub-guide or master guide. The public has an expectation that if we license them, they're of good moral character and so forth, and are responsible. I'm not saying Mr. Gibbons is of good moral character, but the responsibility factor, you fill out an application, and you're given a chance to correct it, and it's not completely corrected and accurately corrected. I think that goes to responsibility. And we want responsible people out there with our stamp of approval on it. And that's why we're recommending this be upheld, but as the regulation says, it's a may. So next year, we don't have to deny it. We can approve it.
Okay, any questions of the appellant or the department? Commissioner McBeth? Yeah, go ahead.
So, Mr. Gibbons, you understand that the reason for the denial is more about correctly filling out the application
100%.
and telling the truth and getting it all out,
Yes, sir.
than it is, the violations. I think what I'm hearing from the department is that they realize that they occurred in the past, but, for obtaining a license or a state of Nevada, it requires a person of good character. So that's the question that they had based on the application. And so, obviously, when it comes around to next year, I think you'll know
Yes, sir.
what you have to do. You understand that.
Yep, 100%.
Okay, we've had closing arguments and I think we're done having questions. So we'll move on to E, the commission will deliberate and then render orderly its order with separate stating findings of fact and conclusion of law.
I'm sorry.
Do you think it's gonna take the detail of the last one, Mr. McBeth?
I don't think so. Now, one thing I would like to ask the DAG is that in the past, when we've done these things, sometimes we've just done them orally, and that the DAGs have taken that oral transcript and put together findings, facts, and conclusions of law. And so on this one, on the last one, I felt it absolutely necessary to really get it nailed down and what our findings, facts, and conclusions were. Obviously, at council, and I have a feeling it's going to get appealed. I think less so on this one, and so we can be, I can make reference to the items in the exhibits, and as far as findings of fact, and then make the conclusions based on the regulation, and give it to you, and you can write it up.
Correct, may it please, Commissioners, Harry Ward, Deputy Attorney General. You are correct in that I will put this in writing, especially the last one, because there's a great anticipation that will be appealed. But likewise, you can just go from your sleeve on this one and just do what you need to do, and I will put it in writing.
Okay, we're still in the deliberation phase of this. And, what I recognize is the department has stated that he can resubmit. It's not like the guiding season is basically concluded for the year. You can resubmit. So any action here doesn't preclude you from being exactly where you are right now. And that would just be do your application again, and they will consider it as filled out properly at this point, I think. I can't say you're good to go, but I think that's the best avenue. Commissioner McBeth.
I think what we're supposed to do is to actually deliberate on this particular item, and so I think, from the standpoint of deliberation, where I'm at on this is that the department has put forth the case, and and Mr. Gibbons has admitted everything. There is nothing to dispute here, and so the deliberation, in my opinion, is that since everything is admitted, he did give explanations, but since all of the violations were, conceded, as well as his is failure to fill out the application properly. You know, the findings of fact are simple in that, you know, we find that all of the allegations made by the department have been admitted by, you know, Mr. Gibbons, and so we so find. You know, we can basically just go ahead and find all of those now. And then the next thing is just a matter of, you know, concluding that, you know, pursuant to NAC 504.671, that the department was within their discretion to deny the application, you know, based on those facts. And I think it's as simple as that. Is that we just make, you know, simple findings and simple conclusions of law that the department followed the statute, and then they issued the notice, we appealed it, we're here. There's no issue of timeliness on the appeal or any of that, and that so the procedure's been followed, and that the you know, the commission should uphold the suspension. I mean, the denial of the application, excuse me.
Any further discussion? Deliberation? Commissioner Young?
Is that, yes, it goes down here, do the rest of it, that's 114, where it goes on.
Well, but we're hearing a new regulation changing guide dates and application periods and all that, but basically a sub-guide can apply pretty much any time. All we're saying is for this guide year, you know, a year from now, he's welcome to apply.
That answers my question, thank you.
Okay. Any further deliberation? Seeing none.
You want me to make the findings of
Yeah,
fact?
you'll make findings back.
Okay. In the exhibits submitted by the department sets forth Mr. Gibbons' application as well as all of the violations, his past violations, which you know, were not placed on the application. You know, clearly were not placed on the application. Mr. Gibbons has admitted to that, and there is no dispute. And so I think it's relatively simple for the commission to conclude, you know, those findings of fact that he did in fact fail to properly fill out the application by putting in his past convictions. And we can simply make that finding a fact, and that then based on that, pursuant the conclusions of law is that pursuant to NAC 504.671.6, the department had grounds to deny the application based on the such failures to put the items on the application, and therefore uphold the denial of the application.
Okay, so that's finding of fact.
Conclusions of law, and if everybody agrees with that, we'll just vote on it. And
Okay. Anybody have anything to add to that, or questions? Seeing none, we'll vote on the findings of fact as stated by Commissioner Macbeth. All those in favor of the findings of fact signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed unanimous.
Except for the recusal. Put that on the note, I mean, on the record, that Commissioner Wallace.
Oh, that Commissioner Wallace did